Hello and welcome to today's video. In a previous video I looked at Pyxis Forming Foam Moldable Foam Clay. And because it's so flexible, I thought it would work really well to make a squishy. So in today's video, I'm going to use some of the forming foam by Pyxis to make a squishy. And I'm starting off using some foam that I had. It was like in a box, kind of protecting whatever was shipping. But I always save that stuff because I thought, I can use it for a project later. Well, now I'm later. And so I trimmed it down to give me the general base of the body or the shape of my little squishy. And then I'm using the air dry clay and I kind of just stretched out into this like pancake-ish type, it kind of reminds me of like pizza dough. And I'm wrapping it around my foam block and all covered. And then I'm going to go ahead and sculpt some ears. So I did my traditional way that I do polymer clay ears, and this stuff does not cut the same. And I think I need to kind of, spend a little more time with this foam clay because it does have different properties compared to polymer clay. So even though some things work really well to, do it the same, certain things I have to do a little bit different. It is a little bit harder to smooth out. And when I do these indentions for the eyes, they don't take the form as much. I mean, it worked, but it wasn't the same as polymer clay. But I did sculpt out a couple of these kind of half, circle eyes. They kind of like cabochons, but they're made out of the foam clay still. And I did get that shaped out how I wanted. And I wanted bottom of it to be a little more like kind of the bottom of it, like a ghost. He's not a ghost. Maybe he's a ghost. But I wanted to have a little more flared out, I guess. And so I'm adding a little more clay on there, smoothing it out with my ball tools. And then I'll go ahead and take my hands to kind of smooth that out just a little bit more. It wasn't quite blended as nicely as I was hoping. So I just spent a little more time on it and I was pretty happy with the results. The bottom doesn't look the prettiest, but I don't care. So now I'm going to go ahead and sculpt out his tooth. And for some reason, I did not have my camera positioned quite right, so it did cut off a little bit at the bottom there, but I think you can get the general idea. And then I sculpted out his mouth, so I'll put his tooth on first, covered that up with his mouth so it's just poking out, like I like to make my little monsters with a little underbite hanging, tooth hanging out. And then I'm smoothing in his mouth into the body or the head or whatever this thing is, and then I'm adding some little ridges with my needle tool, and this worked out pretty well. You just have to put a little more pressure on than you would with polymer clay. And I even made some little indentions at the side to give him like a little bit of a smile. And then I wanted to go ahead and add an air hole, and I decided to put it on the back. And what I want to do is I'm hoping this will help him when you're squishing him. It doesn't have air trapped in there, and also it'll let air in as it sets up since it's air dry clay. The last little detail I'm doing is adding some little indentions with the ball tool. These didn't seem to take too well, so now I did let this guy dry for 2 days, but after the first day I pulled him off the paper and it did kind of stick, and it also kind of warped the bottom because the bottom wasn't dry at all because, it had been sealed up by that paper. So I think next time I'm going to set them on wax paper and maybe pull them off after a day then and let them sit for another day, or even maybe let them sit for 2 days after that to make sure everything is completely set up. But now that this guy is set up, I'm going to go ahead and paint him, and I did decide to use some fabric paint. I have not painted air dry clay before or foam clay, but since he's a squishy, I thought the paint needs to have some flexibility, and I thought fabric paint should work, but it's not covering the best. So I went ahead and did a base coat of white, and if I remember correctly, Graveyard Loon, who's customized some squishies, does a base coat of white, and it kind of helps cover up, on his. He's modifying additional original squishies, and so I thought, that same concept here would work to cover up the black a little bit better because I don't know how these colors are going to cover. So now that I've got the coat of white done, I'm going with this kind of teal-ish, light bluish color and giving him a nice coat of that. And again, this is covering worse than the white, which I thought it might. And just going over his entire body with this color. Now I did do 2 coats of the teal, and it's still not covering the best. So I had this brilliant idea that I will mix it with the white, which obviously is going to lighten it up. So that's where it kind of turns into more of a light blue color. So I'm just getting my colors in there, getting all my little paint, kind of swirl it together so I can get a nice even color. And then I'm going to, go ahead and paint my little squishy. So he's getting all painted, all pretty. And once I'm all done with that, I let him dry overnight, and then I'm going back and adding a second coat of white to the eyes. Now once the white is done, I'm going to add some black around it and add some black pupils. And his look is kind of inspired by Cheese, who I did in my last video. I just liked his kind of eye, his eyes, his pupils offset, and his like this black outline around his eyes. I'm going to go ahead and finish that up. Now that the eyes are done, I'm going to go ahead and add some stripes to him. Originally, I was going to do zebra stripes. I actually kind of looked up some pictures of zebra stripes, and these just kind of manifested into something else. I did them just on one side. And here is the finished little monster squishy. I'm really, I'm happy how this guy turned out. The foam clay seemed to work really well for this. He's definitely squishy. The paint holds up while you're squishing it, but it's, still I'm not happy with the coverage. You can see lots of little streak lines in there. And I don't know, if doing it more would help that much. It just didn't seem like it was going to cover any more than this. It almost seems like it was pulling off the underneath layer as I was painting on the new. I don't know if that's my brushes or the paint or what. So I definitely want to do more squishies with this. The foam worked really well to put it on the inside, and kind of a combination of not using the foam clay for the whole thing and also letting more air in by having that air hole in the back and hopefully allowing that air dry clay to set up better. I think I will try some different paints, or my wife talked about, she does a lot of painting. She talked about adding something, that you can use regular paint on fabric. So I think we're going to get some of that, and I'll add it to some more opaque paints and see how that turns out. And that probably won't be the next video, but it'll definitely be, in the near future. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and remember, never stop creating. Bye.